All right, all right. Let's get our Facebook folks in here and then we can start our show. Got the spinning wheels going. And boom. All right. Welcome in. Welcome in. It is Tuesday night, the 14th of May. My God, Carl, the days really are flying by. How are you? Happy Tuesday. What's good? What's new? We're the blue hats with white shirt gang today.
I know. We didn't even talk about coordinating
No.
our
I
outfits.
mean,
We're
I'm
just
Iowa, but that's
I'm just
what's new?
plain white tee.
Yeah, I'm not cool enough for that. It look gross. I couldn't pull it off. I don't got that swag. But how you doing? What's new?
I'm good. I'm good. Today's been kind of a different day. I got to play plumber. My wife told me the upstairs shower is all plugged up, so I got to have fun with that. And then her battery died on her vehicle, so then I got to play mechanic.
Was that the
Fixing
Jeep?
that later. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
All
one
right.
thing after
Well,
another. But no, yeah, it's been, like I said, and it's been a really nice day, so it's been nice to be outside and get to do that kind of stuff. But no, I'm excited to get here and get to talk a little bit. I know schedule's coming out tomorrow, so that'll be fun to think about for what the Broncos are doing and possible leak of what week 1 is for the Broncos. But tonight, getting to talk about that strength of schedule and how much that matters.
yeah, we'll get into that. Obviously, want to say hello to some people. We went on our first hike as a family with a little guy this last week and had a good Mother's Day. So happy belated Mother's Day to everybody in there. If you haven't called your mom today, maybe do so after the show, not during. But unless you want to hang out with her in the chat room, maybe send her that way and tell her there. But let's say hello to some folks in here as we're getting this show rolling. We got David Youngkin coming in saying, "Evening, everyone. I heard that we are the 20th. I might be wrong. We'll get into that here in the strength of schedule." We got Todd Ostendorf coming in saying, "You get here early." Yeah, David doesn't want to miss the show. That's 2:14. God bless. That's pretty awesome. Todd also says, "Good evening, Nick, Carl Dumler, Broncos country. Great to see you. No reason to be sorry either, David. Always great to see you." We got David Meckelrath coming in here saying, "Good evening, Broncos country. Bonos, Knicks for 6. Hope you're doing well, David. Always appreciate you coming in. Thank you for the super chat. Kicking us off here today before the show even starts. We got, of course, TJ Hendricks saying, "I did see we sit at 20. We'll get into that a little bit and the teams around there. We got David Youngkin saying, "I see the world champions are sitting at 16. I don't know who you could be talking about in that one." And Dylan kind of not breaking some news, but rumors are that Denver is going to be, as you mentioned, Carl, out in my neck of the woods at Seattle, week 1, obviously a much, much different Denver team than the last time they came out to Seattle for week 1. Hopefully different results as well. But I kind of just blacked out that game. I mean, I did have a few drinks. Granted, you'd have to spend like $1,000 to reach that level at an NFL game. But I mean, the Nathaniel Hackett, what was it, an 82-yard field goal or something out there?
Something like that. Pretty close to that now.
Man.
And using timeouts, then using a timeout last sec. I don't know. Yeah, it was a mess of a situation. And thankfully we have a head coach, whether you like him or not, that's not going to happen. He's going to be prepared for situational football. So at least he'll give the Broncos a chance there at the end where it won't be hey, oh my gosh, the coach just screwed this up so bad. There's probably about 3 or 4 games before he got fired that you could pin at least 25% of why that team lost on coaching decisions during the game. I'm not going to talk about play calling, getting things ready, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a rough one to watch. And, it's the only time that I've seen a field goal kicker line up and I'm just like, there's no chance. Like there really wasn't. I just was like, this is the stupidest thing I've seen. Yeah. And our coach did it.
At sea level, I mean, the wasting of the time. We don't have to rehash that too much, but my main takeaway from that game was, leading up to it, a lot of people talking about, Russ washed watch. Denver actually, like, he brought in a Hall of Fame quarterback, but diminishing. Maybe they shouldn't have done that. Seattle was smart to get rid of him, and I'm typically as wait and see as anybody, and that kind of reaffirmed even being more like that. But no, it's not going to be the case. That's not. No, we got a Hall of Fame quarterback. We're going to be back in the playoffs. It's going to be great. Remember leaving that first game being like, man, he looked old, slow, not good. Did we just get got? Did we buy a lemon? Unfortunately, we'll see what he does in with the Steelers. But man, that was definitely walked out of there feeling a little bit tight if you
Yeah.
know what I mean. Uh-oh. Michael Ronquillo saying, good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Thank you so much for the support coming in here. You guys don't have to be like Michael, obviously dropping the big super chats left and right to start the show, to end the show, but it really does help all of our shows, building the Broncos especially. So I appreciate that a lot. And if you can't be like Michael and dropping in, supporting financially, click the thumbs up, subscribe, like, share. We really do appreciate that as you are coming in here. But yeah, back in Seattle, I got to say, Carl, if Denver is playing out here, I'll probably save up my money for meet and greet, especially now that I'm going to be paying for daycare, which is unbelievable. But that's a different conversation. My guest coming up saying, what's up, Carl and Nick and Scott and Dylan at Broncos Country? Always good to see you, Mike. We also got David saying, so the offense looks a little better, but still not convinced about the defense. I think I've been talking about this all offseason, Carl. I'm not really worried as much about the offensive infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of variance because probable rookie quarterback starting, the injuries on the offensive line that didn't come last year that probably have some this year with questionable depth. But on paper, the offense looks middle of the pack talent-wise, I would say. The defense, though, not great. I do think the defensive line is better than last year, where they were probably they went from a bottom 3 defensive front in football to probably bottom 10. But the linebacker core, the secondary, probably worse. So I'm pretty worried about that defense, and I think they were playing over their head with fumble recovery luck, fortune, whatever you want to call it. Last year, that tends to be not sustainable, especially over year to year.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of been this real big switch there. Like you said, last year secondary with Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain, you had a lot more trust in that group to be able to hold their own and do okay. I mean, I didn't expect them to be elite, but competent. Mm-hmm. This year, there's so many changes now. Number 2 cornerback, both safety positions. Unless Locke starts, I guess maybe that one is locked up. I don't know, but still, there's definitely a lot of questions to go with that group. And Vance Joseph, if he can get that group to play even at a middle of the pack level, I would be really darn impressed with that defense, because right now I'm with you. I have a sinking feeling it's going to be a bottom 5 unit, and the offense is going to have to rise up and be something so much more than we think, where Bo Nix is going to have to be one of those rare top 10 quarterback rookies. And I'm not sure he quite has that in him at this point. So,
and that's not a fair expectation for him.
Yeah, no, it's not. But still, you're right. The defensive line at least is improved, so that should help the overall defense behind them improve. Because I've always kind of been build in the trenches and build out from there. If you've got a good defensive line, you can have a mediocre secondary and still be a great defense. But if you have a bad defensive line, you're just going to have a bad defense. Like, it's rare that you can find a bad defensive line and have a great defense.
I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Granted, sleep deprivation, it's this week. I think we're having some of that 4-month sleep regression out here. But I cannot think of a unit where it's been bad pass rush, defensive line, and had actually a good defense. There have been units that they haven't had like the one true superstar on the defensive line, more the collective. Right. I mean, just the Eagles 2 years ago, but their second string on the defensive line would have been starting on half the teams in the NFL. So there's different ways to do it, but I agree. You cannot build a good defense without a good defensive front. Phil McLaughlin coming in said, good evening, Nick and Carl and Deacon Scott. I was reading one schedule guest that predicted we open Sunday night against the Steelers. Would be fun. Yeah, I think it's Scott saying unconfirmed, but Steelers at Falcons week 1. We'll see if that is true. That would be fun. I'd get to watch Russell Wilson then, because I'm covering the Falcons with Scott as well. But it does seem like Denver is going to be heading out to Seattle week 1 based on, Albright mentioned it. Some other people have said it as well. It'll be true once they've actually officially released it, but I think you can probably believe that one.
Yeah. I didn't want the Steelers week 1. Mm-hmm. I didn't want Bo Nix's very first NFL game to have to go be prime time, that kind of atmosphere on the road. Or no, they're at home. I guess that is a home game. But still, like that would be a lot to put on a rookie for week 1 of his NFL career. Yeah. I want them I'm guessing they're going to be like week 3 or 4, and it might be a primetime game where both teams wouldn't be out of the playoffs by that point. So you could still sell it as, hey, these teams are right there in the running for the AFC. Of course, you got Russell Wilson with the revenge. You can sell a lot of storylines there week 3 or 4. But week 1, I don't want that for Bo Nix. I don't want that for a lot of these young players. I just want a regular game. And if it is Seattle, that's probably going to be just an afternoon game. It's 3:25 my time. What, 1:25 your time? I think. Yeah, 1:25 your time. Mountain Time's 2:25. So I think that's a good place for him to start and get back out there to the Pacific Northwest where he's comfortable. He knows that kind of area and what the weather is going to feel like for September, all those kind of things. So I don't mind that game being week 1.
Praying for no wildfire smoke. We tend to get that time of year. That can be pretty ugly. And we're both assuming that Bo Nix is the starter. I mean, there is a chance that he does not end up winning. Now, granted, the path to starting is probably as easy as any typical first round rookie quarterback. Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson would be a major upset in my opinion if they were starting over Bo Nix. Granted, assuming no injuries occur. Hopefully, Bo Nix also can get a little monkey off his back. He had some good success out there at Oregon, but 0-3 against the team that plays in Seattle so far. So also not that Bo Nix goes against him, but Grubb, whoever the offensive coordinator was for the Huskies the last 3 years, is now the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks as well, and 0-3 against him as well. So we'll see what happens there. Back in the Pacific Northwest, but Seattle has not been kind to Bo Nix. Granted, only played there once, but 0-3 against the Huskies.
Right.
Go Dogs. That's my other team. I got to wave at him. The stadium's right down that way. I can almost see him from my window here.
And I got to somewhat cheer for them because my wife graduated with her master's from there. Mm-hmm. So I always tell her, hey, Washington did this. And she's like, oh, great. Okay. Like she's not a big sports person, so it doesn't really matter to her a whole lot. And she doesn't have a whole lot of that team spirit, got all the gear, all that kind of stuff. That's just not her. But I like to keep her up to date a little bit. And the other question I'd have would be, even with the Steelers game, is Russell Wilson even going to be their starter?
I think he is.
I think that probably. I think he's going to get first crack at it.
Yeah.
But it also wouldn't surprise me to see Justin Fields beat him out either.
Yeah, it would be surprising. There was a report today about Fields having some issues with coaches and people. Nick Foles, specifically, I don't know if you saw that report where Nick Foles tried offering some advice in the film room and Justin Fields was on his phone, not listening, La La Land, playing Flappy Bird or some crap. I don't know. Dating me on that one. But we'll see. Seems like Wilson is the starter for sure, but you never know. You got 2 quarterbacks there, and neither of them are coming off great seasons. Rocky says, we don't need to win the division, but please at least be competent. Yeah, that would be good. You know what? For me, I look at the defense and I look at like the second string of the roster. And to me, it's really, you're feeling the impact of the lack of top 100 picks the last 2 of the last 3 seasons and the dead cap hit. I just don't think you got very good depth on the roster, and that's okay. You're going to be competent, but I also think it's important to understand where you're at. Instead of competency, and I think I said this on Monday morning show, I'm more interested in progression and positive direction. If it looks like there's like an identity being built, young players emerging, players being empowered, that's what I'm looking for. They might not be totally competent just yet because, I'm pretty low on the roster. I'm not as low as Mike Clay. Did you see where Mike Clay had the Broncos roster rated out of the 32 teams?
Well, I know I saw ESPN's power rankings having them 31st.
That's where Mike Clay had them too. The second worst roster in football. I don't think they're that bad. But you never know, right? We'll see. Maybe some of it also is, I think even if they have the 31st worst roster, Sean Payton can get them playing like the 25th worst roster. But this is a building block year. A rookie quarterback, a lot of dead cap. You're really feeling the brunt of 2 pretty poor draft classes as it stands right now, without the capital, as well as guys not hitting in 2022 and 2023 as it stands right now. Positive direction. Please give me some positive direction.
Yeah. And the hard part is, obviously, the Broncos have had so much turmoil, changes. It's not just the Russell Wilson situation. It's coaches being overturned year after year.
Mhm.
Some of these guys are on their third coaching staff with the Broncos at this point. And that even the older guys like Garrett Bowles, what's he on? Fourth, fifth? Fourth?
Fifth. He was drafted to play with Kubiak, wasn't he? 2016.
Yeah.
So he's on his fifth.
Oh, gosh. That's not great.
No.
And so, I mean, that is one thing. Like you said, Sean Payton, he can elevate a roster because he's that kind of coach. And it being year 2 in the system. Now, given, I kind of question a little bit how much the offense was his system last year, just because they had to kind of rebuild it on the fly for Russell Wilson. So you're not going to see a lot of the things that they did last year being done this year with Bo Nix, because they're very different quarterbacks. But they're still going to get the terminology. They're not going to be as far behind trying to get caught up on that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, a lot of players will talk. Year 2, that's when you really start seeing things take off, because you're not just learning a new system. You can really start working on the little details of the system. And we got Dennis Woods coming in with a $2 super saying, do you see Moss at cornerback or switch to safety? Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to say cornerback, just because they have less known in the cornerback room. Safety, I mean, it's not known, I wouldn't say, but they've got a lot more choices for guys to work out. I feel like they drafted Moss to be a cornerback. They have a huge hole there at that number 2 spot. Even, I would say, even number 2, number 4, number 5 cornerback on this roster is not known right now of who that's going to be. Is it Levi Wallace? Is it going to be Moss? Is it going to be Mathis? Who's going to come and emerge at that position? Definitely a huge question mark. So I'll leave him at cornerback.
Yeah, you never want to have a huge hole at your number 2 spot, Carl. That's a recipe for disaster. Sorry, I could not. I think, sorry, Scott. Jones is for sure the starting safety. I think you're going to have a camp battle at safety number 2 between Locke and Moss. Moss tackling, the ball skills, return ability as well. I mean, he had a crazy number of pick sixes at Iowa. The off coverage stuff, they had him. Where did he play the most of his snaps last year, Carl? Dimebacker, which run fit wise, a lot of that is a little bit more typical to a safety position. So I know the Broncos brought back Locke, and he was fine last year when he was out there. He's good, but they didn't pay him as like this unquestionable starter. So I think Locke does have the inside track. He started there last year, same system, but Moss is a highly drafted guy, and they're going to try to get him on the field. So that's an underrated camp battle. I could see it either way. Even if Moss is the third cornerback, first guy off the bench, that's not bad return for a late third round pick, especially if he's as good on special teams as he was last year. But at a premium position like corner. But I think there's some flexibility there, and he's one that I am very intrigued by. Both those round 3 picks last year for the Broncos, that 2023 class. Where's Drew Sanders? Where's Riley Moss? One of the most interesting aspects of training camp, preseason, and the early season outside of the rookie quarterback stuff.
It is. And I mean, we're going to talk about this as the offseason goes on and we get into the middle of June and we're kind of bringing up different subjects. We'll talk more about the building the Broncos aspect of it, of like you said, where are those biggest camp battles and that secondary when so much is unknown right now beyond Patrick Surtain. Like, that's the only guy that you can write in marker that he's going to be a starter. You got McMillan's probably pretty close there at that slot corner position.
Jones is a starter.
Okay. But I would agree. But with him having that first year, and like I said, you still got these other draft picks that you've brought in. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out, how they're going to do the rotation at safety early on. It is. And you're going to hope, I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing for the Broncos. If any of those guys can emerge and be something, then maybe we actually have something there on defense and we can be a competent team, since we had that question earlier. But you're going to need one of those guys to emerge and stay healthy. That's the other big question with a couple of those guys, if they can actually be on the field for an entire season.
Yeah, that I doubt. And McMillan had that awesome run early on, starting in about week 6. And then when the defense was playing really well, and then he fell off a cliff. I mean, he was really not very good. The second half of the season, I remember specifically the game against Detroit, a game against New England. I mean, he was dreadful in that game. So I know that he's definitely the starting nickel, but I mean, even though he had a highlight from last year, a blip, I don't think he is completely, as you mentioned, he is completely a no doubt starter at slot as well. Very likely,
Right.
probable, but with how bad he was the last 5-6 games, not a sure thing. Needs to compete again. Needs to stay healthy. Let's say hello to some folks in the chat. Thank you so much, Dennis, for the $2 super. And any questions about the Iowa Hawkeyes are welcome. Jay Roper says, I get to watch live. How you doing, Jay? That doesn't look like curly hair gang these days. I can't tell. It's maybe no, it is. It's wavy hair. Good to see that. That's some good locks. Definitely some looks like Troy Polamalu with a Head and Shoulders ad going on there. It's a good head of hair there.
So,
we also got, gosh, you guys are killing it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, random moment today. I know this is
Okay.
way off topic. I was helping a guy with some gas, and he said something about, he goes, I really like you to shave your beard off. I said, no, I don't think so. And he goes, you're too handsome to have a beard. I'm like, no, 90% of my handsomeness comes from the beard. I don't think you get this, sir. And it's the first time I've ever had a guy like, he was very adamant. You need to shave that beard off.
I think you're getting hit on there. I think you better watch out there. Where's your wife? Maybe you better ask that guy. Mike Woodward coming in saying, evening, everyone. Good to see you. Paul's in the house. Hello. Danielle Berry Sports. Always good to see you. Roy Osborne. Good evening. Chase Wellner in the house. Always great to see you. I already said to Roy Osborne. Benjamin Flores says the gruesome twosome, talking about better with the beard than not. Benjamin Flores here. Hope my picture's up again. It's been working, Ben. We always do like you announcing yourself. Keep up the good work and go Broncos. Mike Naylor's in the house. Hey, guys. We also got Doug saying it'd be nice for Bo to go on the road week 1. Less pressure. I mean, I maybe less pressure, I will say. It gets pretty darn loud in that whatever they call in the Seahawks stadium these days. So that's a tough environment. Granted, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased here, Carl. Just college fans. Maybe it's because they're drunker. It's less corporate, but like college stadiums, like the top college stadiums I've been in, have been far more loud, ruckus, intimidating environment than the NFL ones. I was honestly a little bit like, this is the best you got, Seahawks fans. It's loud, but it's not stadium shaking. Fear for my life loud.
Right. Well, and I mean, NFL stadiums, you're right. It's not as much. I went to the old Mile High Stadium where if you were underneath the bleachers or all the seats, I mean, the whole building is shaking. Like the metal beams are vibrating and you're just kind of like, is this thing coming down on me? And it's not that way anymore. And like I said, college games, you're right. You have that entire college section for the idea of we're going to get loud, and college kids, they don't have any care in the world because, I mean, half of them are drunk and the other half are just excited to be in the crowd cheering, like you said. So it is definitely a different environment. I've been to a lot of Big 12 stadiums. I've been to Nebraska. Nebraska was a fun one, I will say. That was pretty crazy. I would love to get out there to Iowa sometime and see that environment as well and get to wave at everyone. That'd be a really cool experience. But and some SEC schools, get down there to like LSU, Florida, maybe some of them, and just see what they're like. Georgia, I'm sure Scott's been out there before, and it's pretty impressive. I've seen it on TV. It looks crazy.
Yeah, some great ones. Denver Shadden in here. Buckham, hope everyone had a great day. We're doing okay. We got JT say, go Broncos as we a test, especially at Seattle. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, not worried about rain in September, but wildfire smoke. Hopefully that is not a thing. We'll see how the rest of the summer goes. Miguel says, no, not daycare, Nick. You bring back nightmares. Yeah, it's like a second rental house payment. I don't even want to tell you guys. We need the super chats to come in because otherwise Daddy's going to have to work 80-hour weeks. String guy coming in saying, good evening, all. Hope you're doing well. Mike also says, yeah, our edge room needs to be better than 29th in pressure rate. We'll see what they look like this season. They really definitely switched their scheme last year to be more blitz oriented on early downs, and it worked in some games. But there's a point, especially against veteran quarterbacks, where you have to be able to get home with 4. And Denver couldn't do that consistently last year. So we'll see. I really like adding Ellis. Signed a contract today. There's some breaking news for you guys. And you also added Jonathan Franklin Myers. I think the unit's floor rose pretty well. But like Franklin Myers is a great piece to add. But like on a good team, let's say the Ravens added him right now. He'd be their 4th or 5th best guy. That's kind of like how you want Jonathan Franklin Myers to be at this stage in his career. You don't want him to be your alpha. If he is, you might have some issues. So he's, again, useful piece. I'm excited to have him. Definitely helps the room. I mean, going from Jonathan Harris to him should be huge, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not expecting him to be a transcendental piece to the defense.
Yeah. I think maybe the other big part of it, not just the pass rush, but the run defense being vastly improved because the defensive line having some better pieces. You know, you got Roach added to the group as well. Be interesting to see how they're going to use him. I'm hoping a couple of the guys from last year could be a little bit better. Maybe having some better pieces around them increases their ability as well. But I think that's the area, just getting to some longer third down plays. You know, when you're talking about pass rush rate and it's like 3rd and 2, your defense is at a huge disadvantage at that point. Are they going to go deep? Are they going to throw a short? Are they going to run? Like, you have no clue how you're going to go after that compared to a 3rd and 10. 10 years back, let's go get this guy. So them having a stronger run defense should improve the pass rush on top of that. Theoretically, we'll see how that all works out.
I do worry about the run fits and the tackling. I agree with you. I think the front will be better, but the small sample size we had last year when Justin Simmons and Josie Jewell weren't playing was bad, historically bad, in that Miami game. And it won't be like that every single game, but Denver was one of the worst teams in explosive runs given up last season. A lot of that came in the first 5 weeks. They cleaned it up a little bit down the stretch. They weren't as bad as they were the first 5 games. They weren't as good as they showed weeks 6 through 11 or whatever that was either. But that's one thing where I think they can be stouter up front. I do worry about some of the run fits and big runs with questions in the spine of the defense at linebacker and the safety, especially because like Singleton, he's like a lot of energy, high energy player. He tends to over pursue. Sometimes the tackling is not as clean. Jewell is just a more sturdy, solid player than Singleton. And now you add some volatility, especially without Simmons on top of that. So
Well, and part of what allowed Singleton to do what he did was Jewell telling him, "Hey, this is where the play is going," and then just telling him, like, "You go attack that spot," and he can do great with that. You know, tell him, "Hey, see that spot? Hit it. Boom, he's there." But you're right. I think just who's going to be the play caller, who's going to be that new field general for this team without Josie Jewell, that's going to be one of the more underrated storylines of the offseason for the Broncos.
Probably a bottom 5 talent defense coming into the season, but we'll see a lot of young players, second year in the scheme. They're going to have to show it on the field, right? I mean, again, bottom 5 is not as low as Mike Clay is on them, but we'll see how they play out. Gary Palmer says, "Hi, Nick, Carl, and Scott. I don't think Sean's going to be patient. He wants to win now. Go Broncos." I do think that he wants to win now, but I also think that he is a realist as well. He might be unrealistic and overconfident in his own ability, like with the quarterback stuff. I just need somebody who can run my system. If they make the reads that I want them to make, then we're going to be great. We'll see how that plays out. But I think that he understands he's got time. The rookie quarterback especially buys you time, 2-3 seasons. And again, the dead cap hit with the impact of 2 draft classes now that only have 1.5 competent pieces from it so far. You're looking for like 2-3 starters per draft. And right now, Denver maybe has 1.5 in Mims and Benito. Outside of that, it's question mark. So we'll see what happens this season. But this is definitely, he wants to win now, but I also think he's realistic about the state of where things are at.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if they can win as many games as they did last year, win 7 games, I would feel pretty good about the future moving forward. And I mean, the bigger question would be if Bo Nix looks competent while doing that. If you can feel good of, hey, this guy showed he belongs in this league, he can be a starter, and you can build from that. And now you've got your full draft ability, first through 7th round picks, or there might be missing one. I can't remember for the next draft, but then you can really start to do something and have all that cap space. Like I said, taking $55 million out of a roster, that's a lot. That's going to hurt any team out there. I mean, that's what, 5-6 starters possibly, if not more, depending on the level. I mean, I guess level of players, 5 or 6 average NFL starters could probably fit within that, maybe.
Yeah.
But depending on the position. So it does. It hurts the roster overall. Like I said, depth-wise, this team is really going to be hurting. If they have some injuries, watch out. It's going to get ugly quick. I think the starters on the roster, they're decent. I think you can get a lot out of them. Like I said, if Bo Nix plays at a top 16 quarterback level this year, you can do something with them. Mm-hmm. But just so many young players that you're hoping don't have to see the field this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick comes in, says, aloha, building the Broncos. Good to see you, Patrick. And Jay also says, I thought positive momentum for the previous season isn't a thing. It's not a thing in terms of the season was over. We had 3 wins and 10 losses in the final 4 games, and we won 3 of the last 4. Oh, we're going to ride that winning streak over the next season. That's not a thing. There's too much time. There's too much turnover. But from a player developmental standpoint and seeing young guys emerge, I do think there is momentum that way as far as understanding where your roster's at and building off of those guys. But like the small sample size where your season's already done, we win 3 of the last 4, that doesn't mean diddly to me. There's just too much time between. And players have said as such too. It's kind of a fan radio-driven talking point for teams that are bad at the end. But then you hear veterans talk like, oh, do you feel the momentum even though the season's done? No. We go vacation, we go work out, half the roster's gone. It's a whole new, you reset every year. So there's no momentum that way.
Right. No, you're right. It's about what can you see from the young players from one year to the next. You know, the rookies last year, the Drew Sanders, the Marvin Mims, do they take that next step? Well, then, yeah, your team's going to be greatly improved because those are the guys you're depending on to really take your roster to that next level. They're going from the unknown to the known. And right now, that's, I mean, like I said, we're going to get into it more of the last couple draft classes as we get through the offseason. But those are the guys that are going to make or break this season beyond Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Those will be the guys.
For sure. Yeah. We need some people in the 2022 and 2023 class to step up as well. It just cannot be Nick Bonito, rotational edge rusher, and Marvin Mims, special team returner, wide receiver 4. Like that's for 2 draft classes. That's not enough. Even missing those top picks, like you got to find somebody else has got to be there. Phil McLaughlin says, looking at our defense, if we had someone other than Vance Joseph, could we have a better D in your opinion? I think offense is easier to overcome talent issues with guys being schemed up and great quarterback play. Like that can elevate that. Defense, a lot of times it's, do you have the horses? Specifically on the defensive line. You can kind of do some stuff coverage wise to protect some people, but run defense, like pass rush, like do you have the guys up front that can win their one-on-one matchups? I think you can try to limit damage with how you play defense, but again, I think in the end, especially on defense, it's do you have the guys? It's one reason that you see all these freak athletes in like the SEC. They're all playing defense, right? Like it's like, do you have the better athlete? Can we out athlete you a lot of times? And I just don't know if obviously you had a better coordinator than Vance Joseph, you could raise it a bit, but I think it's much more about, do you have the guys?
Yeah, I'm with you there. They can maybe raise them a couple levels or a couple steps up. If you're going to be 16th, you can maybe be like 13th, 14th with the great coaching. Now, I think really bad coaching can destroy any team. So at least if is your guy competent or not would be the bigger question. And I'd say VJ, he's probably middle of the pack. I mean,
we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out more, but he did okay. I mean, he was kind of up and down there at Arizona, Cincinnati. They had some great defenses while he was there. The Broncos, obviously, he was head coach. So how much was he working with the defense? That's up in the air a little bit, but I'm seeing plenty of people fire Vance. Still hate this guy. At least they had a good training camp. I know it's tough because he was that first coach to follow up Kubiak and the Super Bowl and taking that top tier defense. And we saw them slowly start working their way down under Vance Joseph. That's not completely his fault. It's just going to happen. Like you went from legendary defense, maybe top 5 in NFL history. It's impossible to keep it at that level. Like it's always going to start creeping down as you go. Players get older, you're going to have to start replacing guys. It just happens. That's not completely Vance Joseph's fault, but there were some times where I would say he didn't maximize the talent that was here in Denver. And yeah, of course, we got defensive back coach Leonard here in Denver. I do think if things start off rough, it would not surprise me to see Vance Joseph fired within the first 5 weeks and Leonard take over. I think he is a little bit of an insurance policy, and it's part of why they brought him in, is the idea of maybe he could be the future of the defense. There's a lot of people that like him. He did great in college, obviously, but you're hoping that doesn't happen. That means things have really fallen apart. It means the team is doing horrible if Vance Joseph is already being fired early in the season.
Yeah. And Zebulon comes in. How many guys are going to even get second contracts at this point? From the 2022 and 2023 class, it's too early to say. 2021, I mean, Surtain for sure. Miners for sure. I don't know about Javonte Williams right now. And Baron Browning, I also do not know about. Caden Stern's probably not with the injuries, but I don't know. We'll see. So getting at it here, the strength of schedule, adding that here. I know, God, you guys probably cannot see that, but that's stinky Instagram, so you probably won't be able to see that well. But Denver has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Looks like the 13th hardest strength of schedule here. So pretty middle of the pack on the lower end. There's Atlanta at the very bottom there, Scott. There's a pretty easy, but it's I'm going to be honest with you, and I think you probably agree with this, Carl. The strength of schedule stuff is a bit overblown when it comes to using last season's win-loss record. Like we mentioned earlier, the roster has changed a lot, and there's been betting odds out there, articles out there where really last year's records are not very indicative of what teams will be the following season. Rather, the better way to go is off of Vegas over-unders. So if you go off of that, that tends to be the most predictive of your actual strength of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, even there, I mean, you're going to have a couple teams emerge every year that surprise you, both good and bad. Yeah. Houston last year, I don't think anybody really expected them to be what they were.
No.
But at the same time, most people didn't expect the Jets to be as terrible as they were after losing Aaron Rodgers right off the bat. So it does. It varies a little bit there. Strength of schedule for the Broncos, I mean, it still comes down to your division. You're going to have to play against Chiefs. Chargers probably should be better this year. Raiders, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm guessing actually they're going to go down this year. Just they have the worst quarterback situation in the AFC West. At least the Broncos have a little bit of hope. They have no hope. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if their entire quarterback room is changed next year.
Yeah.
Just, I don't have much respect for what they have there. And they lost their running back. So that offense, it could be a bottom 5 offense this year. It would not surprise me one bit. But yeah, I'm not too into the whole, like I said, one way or the other of how the strength of schedule is going to go, just because injuries happen. If the Chiefs lose Patrick Mahomes, what kind of team are they?
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengals last year lost Joe Burrow, missed the playoffs. So it just kind of shows once that one player goes down, things could go very quickly downhill.
Yeah, it really can. And got it up here now. Thank God. But things, I mean, it's pretty hard to say one way or the other with that, but here is your strength of schedule. Broncos there, middle bottom there between Kansas City and Indianapolis. I wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Schwartz as well, who does obviously a longtime offensive lineman and does some pretty good stuff on Twitter with him and his brother Mitchell Schwartz. I always appreciate their offensive line takes and talk. And his big one was scrap whatever the strength of the schedule was from last season and just pick out whatever team has the best quarterbacks. And that's whoever has the best quarterbacks. Those are the ones that are going to be tough, and whoever has the worst quarterbacks are going to be worse, and probably correlates pretty darn highly with the Vegas over-under totals. And unfortunately, in the AFC, compared to the NFC especially, it is a lot harder for teams like Denver, for teams that maybe still searching the desert for that quarterback. in what is an unbelievably talented AFC gauntlet of quarterbacks. I mean, I think you could make an argument that the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are all in the AFC, and probably 10 of the top 15 are AFC quarterbacks as well. There's just, who's the best quarterback in the NFC? Tell me, chat. Who's the best quarterback in the NFC? Is it Dak Prescott? Is it Matt Stafford? Is it Jalen Hurts? Is it Kirk Cousins? I mean, it's not good. That's not a very good quarterback conference. And then AFC, Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow, Allen, Jackson, Lawrence, Stroud, Richardson. I mean, Richardson's maybe a little early to toss out there. We'll see. I don't know. I'm excited about him this season. But I think that's the big one. Quarterbacks in the AFC are tough, and that's going to lead to a much tougher schedule for Denver.
So because you didn't mention him, Brock Purdy.
Oh, middle
because statistically, he was easily a top 10 quarterback, maybe top 5 last year.
Yep. Garoppolo was top 5, top 10 when he was with San Francisco as well, and fell off pretty damn hard, pretty damn quick. So I think it's much more I hope that Bo Nix can be a Brock Purdy and Denver can surround him with enough talent where he can be that caretaker of the football and run the offense. But Brock Purdy has a top 3 offensive mind pulling the strings, playing with 3 Hall of Famers, in my opinion, on the offensive side of the ball, future Hall of Famers, and then 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers as well. So, I mean, he does a good job and he can do some things there, but that is about as cushy of a supporting cast and situation as you can get in the NFL. And also, you talk again, the NFC. Who are the roadblocks there? Who are the Titans that you have to go through?
Yeah.
Not the Tennessee Titans, but like the monster quarterbacks.
Right.
You know, there's no Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen waiting there for him. It's Jalen Hurts turfing the football and playing on a bum ankle when they can't do the tush push anymore. You know, it's a different league.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I don't think there's, well, I guess this is kind of how it goes sometimes. You know, the NFC dominated the early 90s, 80s for a long time there, had some of the best quarterbacks, Joe Montana, Troy Aikman, Brett Favre. You know, they kind of had the top tier there for a long time. Then it switched to the AFC with Brady, Roethlisberger, and Manning. You know, I think, what was it there for a while? That every Super Bowl but like 2 had either Brady, Manning, or Roethlisberger in it.
I think it was everyone but 1.
So the Joe Flacco,
20-year stretch or something 15 years.
Yeah.
And the 1 year it wasn't was the year that Denver blew it against the Ravens. It was the 49ers versus Ravens. That was like the only one. Crazy.
That was terrible. But anyway, so yeah, it has. It's always kind of rotated a little bit. And AFC, unfortunately, the other big part of it is most of those guys are really young still.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you've got a couple of them that are on their way out in the next couple of years. They're here to stay for another 5, 6, 7, 10 years. And unless injuries really derail them. But so, yeah, it's going to be a gauntlet for a while. And that's why you got to really hope Bo Nix can get himself into that conversation and that Sean Payton can be as great as he thinks he is as a coach in calling an offense. And I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Sean Payton. I think he has just a very, at times, unhealthy ego about himself that makes me a little bit nervous that he just thinks he can out-scheme, outthink, outdo everybody else. And I mean, I'd rather have that side of it than those guys that are like, I don't know. And the Vance Joseph, we had a great week of practice and then get blown out by 25 points every week. So I mean, I'm glad Sean Payton's here. It's just going to be interesting to see, can he really elevate this team to be with those big boys? I don't know.
Only time will tell. Only time will tell. But yeah, we will see what happens there. Denver, middle of the pack mostly, bottom half in strength of schedule, which, considering the difficulty of the AFC, is tough. But, you know, what can you do? Denver will do what they do this season, and regardless of the schedule, we'll see how it plays out for Denver. But they're sitting there at 4.95 winning percentage of last year's opponents. I don't think it's going to matter too much. And at some point, we'll get a chance to talk about the over-under as well. We'll see if that line moves at all. 5.5 right now. I think 3rd lowest in the NFL. Part of that is I don't think they're the 3rd worst team, but again, AFC is tough. But We'll see. So I want to say thanks to everybody coming in today, joining us. We had David Meckelrath, Michael Ronquillo, Phil McLaughlin, Dennis Woods, Gary Palmer, Phil twice. Thank you, Phil, joining us today. Also, make sure you guys are following Carl on Twitter. Carl's at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle, Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to our show, like on our channel, and share on your social media. Carl, any final thoughts before you get out of here and go look for your wife?
Well, I wanted to get to this one from Donnie Wentz saying, Carl, sounds like you don't really believe in Sean Payton. It's not that. I mean, I do. I'm glad he's here. I just think there's times where he really does believe he can outcoach the other side and take a lesser talented roster and still go out there and dominate. And it's a combination. You need a great coach, but you also need good players on the field to actually go out there and do something. You talked about it with McMillan. Started out there looking great. As the season kind of went on, some teams figured out maybe how to play him a little bit. He started going downhill. So, talent coaching can only get you so far. And so I'm hoping that Sean Payton recognizes he needs more on this roster than what they have right now. They've got an opportunity. Again, lots of cap space next year, lots of draft picks, so they can turn things around in a hurry. I'm hoping, like I said, Sean Payton doesn't think too highly of things and doesn't recognize the weaknesses that are going on with this roster.
We'll see. I mean, if he gets the quarterback right, we're going to have multiple off seasons to figure it out and reshuffle the deck. But as you say, if you got the quarterback, you got a chance for sure. So appreciate everyone coming in. You guys have a great rest of your week. Always choose kindness, compassion. We'll see you next time. Go Broncos.